I call to order the Westlake City Schools regular board meeting for Monday, October 26th, 2020. Roll call.
Kraft.
Here.
Stoll.
Here.
Fanukin.
Here.
Lazinski.
Here.
Piernot.
Here.
You would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Stoll.
Yes.
Fanukin.
Yes.
Kraft.
Yes.
Lazinski.
Yes.
Piernot.
Yes.
Motion carries.
At this time, we'll have a hearing of the public. Do we see? We do not. We're going to move on to approval of the, what's that? Approval of the minutes. We've all had an opportunity to review these minutes of past meetings. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
All those that do not approve say no.
No.
The minutes are approved.
Oh, no, that was an accident. Nothing.
Okay.
All. That was supposed to
At
be.
this time, we're going to move on to informative reports and recognitions. And do we have Lisa Zook here? Behind the pillar. How are you? Thank you for joining us tonight. Do you have some news to share with us tonight?
I do.
Thank you.
I need the microphone.
And she can take her mask off, too. Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am Lisa Zook, Dave Kosovar's assistant, and I belong to a group that is specially made for school districts, and it's called Education Office Professional of Ohio. And every year they offer an award for an Educational Administrator of the Year. Well, after everything Dave has done for the district, and I was more involved with the group, I decided to submit his name. And some of the criteria was a successful applicant meets the needs of his or her students, demonstrates strength in communication skills, is committed to professional development and growth, and is active in his or her local community. They also need to have communication skills. The applicant has demonstrated strength in both personal and organization communication and professionalism. The applicant has demonstrated commitment through consistently upgrading his or her administrative knowledge and skills, providing professional development opportunities for other members of the educational team, and motivating others to achieve. And then community involvement. The applicant has demonstrated knowledge about and is actively involved in the local community activities as well as an understanding of state and national issues. Well, I'm sure with everyone here and everyone who is watching and listening to us does know that Mr. Kosovar definitely meets all these standards. So right before the COVID came in, he received an email from our chairperson indicating that he received this award, and he was excited. And of course, he said, "Lisa, what did you do? Now what did you do?" So I would like to present this award to Mr. David Kosovar, the Educational Administrator of the Year 2019-2020.
Thank you very much. You know, I think about, we were talking about just the other day, some of the attributes that he's a favorite among the staff, he's a favorite of the city, everybody in the city council was talking about how awesome is working with the citizens there. EPA, of course, awarded him not for one for well, so awesome work.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We are going to move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Goggin?
Yep, sounds good. Mr. Hopkins, would you mind? He has a PowerPoint that he's going to share, and I hope the board can see it. I will read what's on it. It's probably more for the folks at home. Okay, good. So I do want to talk a little bit about last week. Last week was a roller coaster for us, and I'm just going to kind of take you on that ride with us. Go to the next slide, Mr. Hopkins. So our, yeah, is my sound working okay? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was
Thanks.
told the microphones were sensitive.
Awesome.
So our week started off pretty well. We noticed New York Times and National Public Radio ran stories about the lack of spread taking place in schools. It was not only something that was reported nationally, but our governor mentioned it as well. And this was exciting for us because it was mirroring the information we were collecting internally. So that was really good news for us. And if you can go to the next slide, Mr. Hopkins. So we have been tracking every week the number of cases and the number of quarantines that we would have come into our school district. And when we were looking at it, you would see, let's see, when we look at the past, let's count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you look in the past 5 weeks, 4 out of the 5 weeks, we weren't reporting any cases. Now, last week I sent out a video, last Friday I think it was, not this past Friday, but the Friday before, I sent out a video, staff kind of sharing some of this information, and this was prior to the New York Times or NPR story came out. So that's one of the, it was like pretty excited because we were kind of noticing these patterns ourselves, and then to have that confirmed that people weren't seeing the cases either. And so the other part with this is there were, on the right, when you see that 0 of these cases were transmitted in school. So all of them happened outside of school to people who are associated with our school. So that was really good information. Then going to the next slide, Mr. Hopkins. So when we started off our school year, we started off virtual for 4 days, and then we moved into our hybrid model for the next 7 weeks. Within that time, we've been watching the data, and our focus has been phasing kids back in. So you'll see that, in phase 1, and this was even prior to coming out of virtual, we were bringing in our preschool, our kindergarten, and some multi-handicapped classrooms. Phase 2A, we were bringing in some resource room students, students in high-need English language learners, and then 2B, we were bringing in additional students with special needs, and that started on the 19th. And it would vary by building, and our focus here was this. We wanted to get to students who needed more assistance and maybe struggled more with the hybrid part of the learning, and we wanted to do it while maintaining our physical distancing. So when we would be able to bring more students back, but also to keep all safety protocols in place, we kind of aligned that. So things were happening, we were growing, we were bringing more students back. And then, next slide, you obviously start seeing new reports of Ohio setting records for a single day. And then the next one was, I think even from today, stay right there. No, back, sorry. That's all right. I meant the graphic to the right is what I was referring to. So we started seeing negative trends. And so we were seeing still seeing positive data internally and starting to see negative trends all around us. Now you can go to the next one, Mr. Hopkins. So even as we were tracking from the Ohio Public Health Advisory System, you can see in August we were in red, and then we spent, about 8 weeks in orange, and then we started seeing going back to red again. Going into red on the 15th was something that we noticed, we tracked, but it wasn't something that was ringing alarm bells. It was last Thursday, the 22nd, where the governor announced that Cuyahoga County, and I think maybe a couple other counties across the state, raised up to what they called a red with an asterisk. Now, what that means is the red with an asterisk is a warning saying that these counties are about to go into the highest level 4 category of purple. And so we saw that, and that really drew some significant attention. Going to the next slide. Now, I showed this a moment ago, and I focused on the number of positive cases, but the other thing that we're starting to see is more people who are having to go into quarantine. And a lot of times when you have people come, quarantine happens when you are in close contact with a person who has tested positive or presumed positive for COVID. So while we're not seeing the cases internally, we are seeing an increase in quarantine. So more of our staff, more of our students are coming into contact with folks who have confirmed cases of COVID. So that, wasn't incredibly alarming, but just something that we were looking at. So while we saw the trends, we didn't see our cases rising inside yet to correlate with the rising outside of the school district, but we are seeing more contacts happening. So next slide, please. So this is a slide from my town hall that I gave probably late July, early August. I can't remember the exact date when I did it. And since then, so first of all, I'll say that, we obviously respect the system that the Ohio Department of Health has in place. We have been less reliant specifically on it. Originally, it was the only data that we had. We now have local data as well that helps us. And so while we were originally completely tethered to this, we're a little bit less. November and December, what's interesting is when in planning this past summer, most school districts had November and December circled, really concerned about it as you get into cold and flu season, as it gets colder and people are inside. Some school districts even did planned shutdowns scheduled from the summer to avoid the holidays. Holidays are also really tough because you do have the family gatherings. And another thing is kids coming home from college. Colleges we're seeing even our internal cases that we had, we've seen a significant amount connected to having a kid come home from college or a student visiting college or some sort of college connection as well. So we did expect some uptick with there. One of the things I did at the beginning of the year and all inside, what I did in the town hall and is I did make a commitment to the community where I said, and I clearly said, when we're in level 4, we're going to be in virtual. Now at the time, we were looking at it and virtual was like, we're never going to hit purple, type of thing, to where that was like catastrophic. That's the worst you could possibly get. And even with my staff, as I was bringing them back, one of the things that we assured them was, hey, we're going to monitor transmission levels. If we ever get to that level 4, we're not going to bring you in. We're going to keep you in that virtual model. So that's something that we have talked about as well. Now, one of the things that I mentioned before when I showed you the phase-in is our focus across the board has been phasing into all-in. We have not been very focused on, the purple plan, because the purple plan is virtual. But now that first of all, we're not there yet, okay? And I guess that's something else I need to point out, is we won't know until Thursday. We won't know until Thursday if the county actually goes into purple. I'm making assumptions based on looking at news reports and hearing record-breaking days and those type of things. Those those reports can't be good. You know, that doesn't sound like a, you know, we're going to drop down and not be in purple. So I'm kind of going through this week as if we might be hitting purple and looking at what we can possibly do. So back even at the beginning of the year when I showed you that phase in, we had a little bit of our virtual plan did adjust. That's what we're looking at right now is how are there ways we can potentially adjust our purple plan? And that's what we're going to spend these next few days on. I will tell you it is not as easy to plan as folks would think because what's going to happen is if it happens where Cuyahoga County goes into purple, then you are pretty much going to see almost every Cuyahoga County school district go virtual. And if that happens, that impacts our staffing levels as well. Because just like in every other situation, we can have staff members utilize FFCRA, the Federal Coronavirus Act, to stay home for childcare, just like other folks can. So there are definitely, if we want to try and do anything differently, we're not quite sure where we are with it right now, but that's something that we're working on. So that's why our plan right now is I did send a message out on Friday to staff and to families, and just saying, be ready because it's very likely that if we do hit purple on Thursday, I'm going to have to be looking at a virtual option, but we are looking at any type of option that we have to do things differently. And then my last slide, I think, is just the three plans and just showing you we didn't have something separate built in for this. And that's pretty much what I wanted to share about this at this time. And I can take any questions.
You bet. You bet. And I know that the board members have some things that they want to share. I know after your email was sent that we've all received numerous emails and communications from folks on this. And if I may, just because I know folks are listening to what we have to say, as you express your words, I'd encourage you to take off your mask so folks can hear us pretty clearly. I had the good fortune of visiting 3 of our schools with Dr. Goggin last week. And it was great to see the energy in the schools. It was great to see our incredible staff, very, very hard at work. And we can't say enough about our staff. Our staff is awesome. Our families are awesome. Our students are awesome. Everyone's really working very, very hard. And what was great to see is it's working. It's working. When you walk into the schools, obviously there are lesser students within the classroom. Teachers obviously working very, very hard, doing their online as well as in classroom. I had the opportunity to chat with a number of teachers on staff, and no one told me, hey, I think we need to shut this current plan down. They're buyers into the plan, and we appreciate that. I know there was concern going all in at this point, of course, but teachers were very supportive. Staff was very supportive of this current environment, really of hybrid. So it's working. I feel that within our schools, we have those safety protocols in place within the hybrid, lesser students, smaller classes, shortened days, teachers really working the program, working it very hard. Love to read those director reports, and it was great to see that music was engaged as well, to see that in place. So what am I getting at? I'm getting at it's working. It's working really well. I know that we're receiving very positive comments from our families with regard to the hybrid plan. And as you work through this plan and looking at the future, hearing about how we may work forward to somehow keep this going, I think would be excellent. As I look at how hard families, students, staff working to really make this happen, and the desire for students as well as teachers to be in the classroom to continue doing really what they do best in the way that they do it best, I think is very, very important. Those are some of my initial comments, but board members, what else do you have to say?
So one thing, if I could point
Yeah.
out, is that as we walk through and as I walk through my buildings, I think the other thing that stands out to me about our staff in general,
Yeah.
just straight across the board,
Right.
is our staff is, they're being respectful of distancing and
Right.
protocols, but we've tried that concept of physical distancing but social connections. And I'm seeing, people stopping and tying a kid's shoe or fixing a hair clip or something,
Sure.
to where there's still that connection
Yeah.
that they have. And I agree, and I do agree that, the hybrid is working. I think, we have to acknowledge that we're in a separate level right now. We're not, I take that back. I played over into Thursday and we're not there yet.
Right.
But we do have, and I think just to enforce that, we did make that commitment that if we're in 4, we're going to be looking at the virtual, but it's something that we'll talk about to see if we can do that a little bit differently in
Sure.
how we do that.
Sure.
So,
Other thoughts?
One big comment that I think is important to remember for everyone, this is the first time any county in Ohio could potentially be at purple on Thursday. So this is new territory for the entire state. So we really don't know what the full ramifications are going to be, whether it's going to be county level, state directives, or whatnot. And that's the one thing that I have been trying to reiterate to parents and who've reached out to me over the weekend is just, we need a little bit of patience to understand what full implications this is going to be looking like. And I will say, as a parent who's got a child in 7th grade, and what I'm hearing from other parents, the hybrid's working very well. Those who are 100% virtual, it's working well. They're engaged, they're learning, and it's, great hearing, music class happening from her bedroom, or
Right.
when you're hearing a lecture on world history, going on. So it is, have there been hiccups? Yes. Reaching out to the teachers has solved every single problem. When you can't find an assignment, or assignment had the wrong due date, or something along that line, there's been mistakes on student end, on parent end, and it's just a simple email solves so many problems.
I just want to make a comment. I'm not sure where we're going to be on Thursday, that's obvious. But one thing we do know is that purple is the highest level. From my understanding, that would also change people's work effect. If you're a non-essential worker, you may be required to work from home. So we don't really know the full ramifications here. So I think we have to be flexible, and we're playing it by ear. But our goal, just so everyone knows, our goal is to ultimately get every student into class all the time, 5 days a week. We've heard from a lot of parents, and I think most people feel they learn better in a classroom setting than an online setting. So, we have to balance, as the board here, we have to balance both the safety of the children and also the learning. And we're trying to do the best we can, given the circumstances that are somewhat unknown and constantly changing. Thank you.
I'm rooting for yellow.
I'm rooting to stay in red.
Well, I have a purple jacket, and that's at the back of my closet
Yeah.
now. I just worry about the long-term effects of, moving the kids from virtual to hybrid, and who knows what this is going to do. I just worry long-term.
We got an email about that, and I thought that was a really good one, where a parent was sharing their concerns about moving back and forth. And I think that's a really good point. And it's one that we've been trying to be very conscious of that, which is why when you look at what we've done, we've stayed in the same format for 7 weeks. And we want to build routines, we want to build consistency. I agree with Dr. Stoll. You know, kids they learn best when they're here. You know, and I do believe that we're doing a much better job. I think the improvement in kind of the virtual learning part of this from last year to this year, I think teachers have done very, very well.
Absolutely.
I think in adjusting, and you have to understand, and I think I've just heard from many teachers on how difficult it is to be in a hybrid role, to teach students in front of you and students at home at the same time. And it is a completely different way of teaching, and I think that's something that they're really working hard on doing. But I think moving from that format to format is difficult. And I think as we look at that, you know, but you don't want to turn around and say, well, it's the holidays, so let's just do virtual until after the new year, you know, so then we can stay in the same format. So we're trying to figure out different ways and some different thoughts and some different things we can do. And we're just not quite there for me to say, this is what we're going to do differently in there. But we got to get there quick. We got to get there quick because hopefully we don't hit purple on Thursday, but unfortunately, if I was to ask which way I think it's trending, I think it's trending there. And I'm telling you, last week, just the emotional shift from Monday to Thursday, where we're getting more kids in, we're seeing, you know, our cases are down and this sort of thing, that sort of, and then Thursday, and it's like that asterisk shows up, and you are like, you've got to be kidding me. So, and just just the fact, like Liz said, we could be the first county in the state of Ohio to hit that. And that, it was just a punch to the stomach, where, you know, you're focused there, and now you're talking about purple, you're talking about going, you know, back in there. So it was a tough week, frustration all the way around, and you know, but that's what we're going to have to deal with.
As you project out and as you work on plans as you move forward, again, talking with teachers that say, man, I'd love to be here no matter what, talking with families that say, well, our students would like to be here no matter what. Are those variables that will work into a future plan?
I don't know.
Okay. Other thoughts? Okay. Mrs. Lazinski, I think you were speaking to the point of really just mental wellness, and I know that we've received a number of emails with regard to that. I know that Westlake City Schools and through Dr. Goggin and his staff have really addressed that well. And we'll continue to spread the word with regard to keeping our students healthy, really, and mind, body, and spirit, and continuing to educate them. Shall we move on to the treasurer's report?
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight, if it's okay with the board, I will skip past our report. We have a couple discussion items up next in section 4. And the first one is going over the finances. I'd like to present the 5-year forecast to the board. So.
You bet.
All right. So I have put out in front of the board members here, and I'll bring up on the screen, a quick little 5-year forecast information. Now, I will say for people who are watching out in YouTube land that this information is available on our board docs website under the board discussion items, district finances of tonight's meeting. It's accessible in a PDF that can be opened up on your computer so you can see things a little more clearly. But the board has it here in front of them, and we'll go through some of these. So obviously on the first page here, this is a general idea of what our 5-year forecast looks like. We've shrunk it down a little bit, but our 5-year forecast we're required to do twice per year. It used to be October and May. It has now moved to November and May. So we're doing it, I still like sticking on that October schedule. If the board wants to make any changes, we have some opportunity to do that. But the 5-year forecast is really, gives us 3 years of actual data and then 5 years of a forecast data going forward. And to be very honest, the 5-year forecast is, and generally accepted as a guesstimate. We just use it for planning purposes, for management's planning purposes, to get an idea of how we can move forward and give the board an idea of how we can move forward in our finances. I do ask repeatedly each year, please don't hold these numbers as being, the down to the penny type of numbers. I generally try to forecast conservatively, so the goal will be to be forecast a little bit under what our actual revenues would come in, and our forecast would be a little bit over on our expenditures, what they would actually come in. So when we look at our 5-year forecast here, we'll just jump to the bottom line because that's the one that generally is most important. And you'll see our unreserved fund balance at the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, 2021, fiscal year 2021, would have about almost $23 million. But each year as we move forward, we're showing a deficit spending, and ultimately, we're showing a deficit of our fund balance in 2025. Now, good news on this is we had projected it in 2024 previously. And as we've spoken about, excuse me, at other board meetings, is the pandemic, we did have a significant savings that we realized during the pandemic. Now, to be honest, this year is going to cost us some, okay? So we'll briefly go through each of these sections. So I'm going to skip to the next page here. And we're going to look at our revenue. The main source of our revenue is local taxes. You'll see in the description there, if we were at 100% collection, we'd be a little over $48 million, okay? That does include homestead rollback and homestead exemption, which is a reimbursement for from the state that the state pays on behalf of our homeowners in the community. So ultimately, we would be looking more in the range of $43.8 million if we were a 100% collection, if we remove the homestead rollback piece. I'm projecting this fiscal year at 96%, so it would be a little over $42 million. Each percentage point is almost $500,000 to us. So obviously we want our community, our taxpayers to pay their taxes on time. It's the most beneficial to us in collecting those, but we have been certified this year at a little over 96%, so I'm using 96% as my collection rate. Each year I am holding that going forward. And the one thing that really changes this is our new construction that's happening in the community. I don't count on new construction. I don't know exactly when it's going to come onto the books. It doesn't come onto the books really until it's certified for occupancy. So if things get delayed, it can affect it. So I don't forecast that. So I keep it going forward. The other piece that can show an increase is as property values increase, there is a section of our taxes called our inside millage that also you increase on what you pay in taxes. The majority of the taxes that you pay to the school district is outside millage and is adjusted as your property values go up, the millage rate goes down. But inside millage never changes. So this shows a small, what I call anemic increase each year going forward. And the reason for that is as property values increase slightly, we realize a small gain from that inside millage, but it's not a significant gain because of House Bill 920.
How small of a gain is that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
How small of a gain is that?
How small of a gain? So I'm showing on here, it'd be a couple $100,000 a year. I mean, it's not really a huge gain. And again, this is forecast. It all depends on what property values would increase. Our inside millage, I want to say, is around 5.9 mils, but I'm just going off the top of my head. That could be off. So it's, again, out of our effective rate of 28 mils, it's only a small portion of it. Moving to our next sheet, where we look at our state grants. Typically speaking, our state foundation formula funding, which is shown in that unrestricted grants and aid line, is pretty easy to forecast, okay? We are what's called a guaranteed school district. The way I like to say that is the state would like to give us less, but according to some laws that they've passed, they cannot. So we're held at a old funding formula rate, and it comes out each year to be right around $3.4 million. Now, that was really easy to forecast up until March of 2020. So throughout the pandemic, as the state was being hit hard for their revenues, they needed to balance their budget. The state can't print money like the federal government can. They decided to take back about $300 million in funding from school districts. So we took a significant decrease. I want to say it was actually a much more significant than it shows in our fiscal year 2020. And we appreciate the work of our local politicians, our district politicians who are at the state level, specifically Dave Greenspan and a number of other politicians who had helped districts like ours who were going to take a very large hit of about 1.5 million, and they passed a law to reimburse some of that back. And so we ended up only taking about a $700,000 decrease last year. Now this year, I'm showing that all the way down to 2 million. Again, it's about that $1.5 million decrease. There is potential that we'll get about $500,000 back, is what it looks like right now. Again, because of the work of our local politicians. But I have not counted on that specifically, so I'm holding it at 2 million. The big variable as we look at this line item here is going forward, I am making the general assumption that by fiscal year 2022, our state foundation formula funds will be back to those pre-pandemic levels. Now, again, that may or may not be correct. I don't know, but that is a area of concern that I want to point out there. The other line, our restricted grants and aid, you'll see fluctuates the past few years. This is based on several different levels, but the main purpose of this is we can put in for what's called a catastrophic cost reimbursement. And for students with special needs, the state sets a dollar figure on what the district should be spending on each of those students based on their categorical level. If we spend over that, we can put in for reimbursement, and we typically spend well over that. Unfortunately, the game is a little bit, it's a moving target all the time, as the state doesn't tell us exactly what the budget is for catastrophic cost reimbursement. It's based on how many districts put in money for it, and then they divvy up the pot based on your state share index, and we're only a 5% state share index school district. So we've seen some smaller numbers over the past few years. I'm using $50,000. Even if we had a really good year where we were able to get a lot, it's not a significant impact on our $50+ million budget, but it is something I want to point out here. Moving on to other revenue.
Could I ask them a question?
Absolutely.
What was the difference, in 2018, we had the 157,000.
So in 2018, we actually, in 2017, they were late on reimbursing our catastrophic cost. If we went back another year, you'd see we didn't get a catastrophic cost reimbursement in 2017. In 2018, it was double at about that $80,000, $85,000 each year. And then we saw a decrease last year.
Thank you.
Moving on to other revenue. Again, this is an area I want to talk about. The first line, property tax allocation, like I said at the beginning of this presentation here, this is our homestead rollback, homestead exemption. So this is reimbursements that would typically be paid by specifically the homeowners here in Westlake, but it's a reimbursement that the state pays on your behalf. The next line, though, is our all other revenues. And some of the pieces here is we had a very significant increase last year in our other revenues, and that's tied directly to the payment in lieu of tax agreements that we have had. There was a reappraisal or an update that happened back in, I believe it was actually in fiscal year 2020, tax year, I think 2019, that people have been arguing their tax values. And we will work with some businesses, typically it's businesses, that we'd work in and do a payment in lieu of tax, and they'll make a payment directly to the district to settle that tax dispute. So we've seen some increases in revenue in 2020. Additionally, we did have some for at least the first part of the year, we had some higher than historically the past few years interest gains on our investments and our banking. But this year, I don't expect any of that to happen. Interest rates have bottomed out to pretty much as low as they can go. We also have, I don't think we're going to see a continuation of those payment in lieu of tax agreements. In fact, I have a concern that we may start seeing the opposite, where we're going to see tax valuation challenges that are going to be successful, because if your business is held at 50% capacity, you're generating less revenue than you had pre-pandemic, and that would affect your tax, the way you're viewed for tax purposes. So that's certainly an area of concern. Also, this year we don't have kindergarten tuition coming in. The board had opted to move to a half-day kindergarten for all of our students. So there is no full-day option this year. So we don't have that tuition money coming in. So there's a number of areas that we're going to see a significant decline in all other revenue. I'm at 1.4 this year. I've used 1.5 as an estimate going forward. That has historically been a little low. I am worried about the 1.4 being slightly higher this year, though, to give you a heads up.
Mr. Hopkins, how much of that 2 point, or I should say, a little over 600,000 from the previous year was like one time? Like interest was obviously a one-time type thing.
Interest is one time, and the pilot agreements, they can
What was
sometimes.
the question?
He said, how much of the difference from 2019 to 2020 in our all other operating revenue of roughly $600,000, how much was that one-time payment, okay, or one-time gains? Interest is one of those that we know is because rates have dropped so significantly,
Right.
we're going to see a lower amount this year no matter what we do. The other area is with those pilot agreements. The pilot agreements can be multiple years, but usually they're settled year 2 or sometimes year 3 in, so we often get either a double payment or a triple payment in the first year that we actually sign it, okay? And then it doesn't carry forward at all. So your pilot agreements, for the most part, are in that 600,000 as well, and we may have a little bit of carryover into this year, but not much.
If you had to, as related to the interest income, was a lot of that driven by, or any of it driven by the construction project?
No, in fiscal year 20, we had dropped our levels of the construction revenue down to such a smaller level because we finished our building at the beginning of fiscal year 2020. We opened in September of 2019, which is fiscal year 20. At that point, by December or so, we had liquidated most all of our revenues that from our bond sale to build the new elementary school.
So then how much would you say is that one-time pilot money?
Typically we're seeing pilot agreements of anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000. So if it's a couple year payments up front, that could be $100,000 to $200,000. So I really would tell you probably as the vast majority of it is. We know our kindergarten revenue, okay? We only had about 100 students on all-day kindergarten, okay? We know we could go back and look at our interest payments. I could certainly get the pilot agreements and send copies to the board of it. But you're going to see that, those pilots make up, I would say probably half of it. You have half for your pilot agreements. You have about $250,000 that was of kindergarten tuition that you're not generating. And then, I'm just showing a decrease in general in there with interest income. And I have some other concerns. I'm worried about the winter sports and pay to participate. We just have some general concerns about money that we would generate in all other revenue.
So about 300,000 in one time, you would say, with the pilots.
I can go pull exact numbers for you, but I would say offhand, that's what I would do.
Yeah, just estimated, based on like 600,000.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to expenditures of salary and benefits. As we have our salaries and benefits going forward, obviously, we know we're in the people business, okay? I like to say we don't make widgets, we don't buy raw materials. Our staff are who we pay to educate our students. So as we have our salary and benefits moving forward there, I do want to point out, the increase from 2020 to 2021, okay, in our salaries. And again, we have some built-in raises in there that we know we have agreements that we had with both bargaining units. So we had steps and raises that were built in there, but we also see a big increase there is with the shutdown of the pandemic, we really had no overtime or extra time for any of our classified staff from March through the beginning of the school year. So typically when we would be driving, field trips, bus drivers would be out doing field trips, or we might have what's called bump ups because somebody is out and a custodian, a assistant custodian moves to head custodian and gets a bumped up a rate of pay, or we have people out and we have other people coming in subs. Our classified is done through salary, not through a purchase service for subs. So we saw a decline there from what we had anticipated, significant decline from last year. And again, most all of that is tied to to the pandemic. Salaries and benefits are generally pretty straightforward to judge within a single fiscal year. Going forward is always a challenge, and you'll see going forward for me, on salaries, I'm using a 3% increase each year. On benefits, I'm using a 10% increase on medical, or health benefits, medical, dental, prescription, vision. I'm showing a 10% increase each year. This year, I'm showing a 1% increase in our health benefits. One of the effects of the pandemic is people stopped using insurance, meaning that they didn't go to the doctor, they didn't go to the hospital, as people were concerned about entering that environment, pushed off some healthcare expenditures. So this year, our rates went into effect October 1st. We're seeing a to be honest with you, we're showing a 0% increase this year, okay? And our staff, that's been passed along to staff, there is no increase in the premiums this year. I have 1% built in there because if we have changes to people going from a single to a family plan, or in some cases, we have been adding some additional teacher assistant positions to help in this new teaching environment that we're at this year. And if they pick up a medical plan, a health plan, I want to be prepared to have some money set aside, for that in the forecast. But going forward, it's a 3% salary, and then benefits are tied to either salaries for your retirement, Medicare, and workers' comp, and then we have 10% for our health care going forward in there. Moving on to purchase services. Again, purchase services is an area that we've been creeping up each and every year. And if I had it a little bit longer, we'd be right around that 6.3, 6.4, 6.2. We're $6 million each year for the past handful of years. Last year, because of the pandemic, we dropped down to 5.7. Okay, this is an area that I'll tell you, this caught me a little off guard. We know there's savings in here where we had gasoline for buses we weren't purchasing, okay, for the last 3 months of the school year. We weren't heating or cooling the school buildings to any sort of level that we typically would be, nor were doors opening, 500 times a day, letting that air, exchange in and out. We didn't have our lights on to the same level, so electric bills were down. In some cases, we were paying less to some placement of students where students were outplaced and they could not do that, or they were doing it virtually at a different cost. We didn't have substitute teachers after roughly March 17th for the remainder of the school year. So purchase services, all of those things that I talked about there are all in that purchase services piece. And so we saw a significant decrease in purchase services. I don't expect that to have any effect this year going forward. We know unless there is a situation where we would go completely virtual, right now we're running our buses every day, okay? So we have, the need, our staff is here teaching in the buildings, we have the need for substitutes. In fact, we increased our costs that we're paying for subs this year. So we have those areas where I don't think we're gonna see a savings in purchase services, so I've moved it back up to that 6.5 level that we were kind of at where we were expecting to be last year.
So, we gained almost, or saved almost $500,000 because of COVID.
Yep.
Now, I know, of course, we spent a lot more this year than we anticipated with more cleaning, more help, and everything associated with that. But if that's a shining star of anything, you know.
It is, and we're going to see that on the next slide as well. If going in there of our supplies, equipment, and other expenditures, you're going to see that, you know, supplies and materials, again, we've been right around that 1.3, 1.4 mark each and every year in our supplies and materials. It dropped down last year to under $1 million. Again, why? You know, as we stopped school or physical teaching in school buildings, and roughly March 17th, we didn't have toilet paper, paper towels. We didn't have supplies, classroom supplies. We typically like to buy classroom supplies in May for the upcoming school year. I asked everyone to hold off on that last year because we didn't know what it was going to look like. In May, we were still very much in some uncertainty. So our level was down significantly. I don't see that being again, having any impact on this year. In fact, we might be a little higher than this year than we typically would expect, again, because we pushed some of those classroom type level purchases from May. We pushed them into July and August once we had a better idea of what this school year looks like. We also have capital outlay over the past couple of years. We've been using PI as much as possible to do the capital outlay when appropriate. It's reduced our capital outlay purchases down. Again, I think our next conversation is going to be about PI, and I don't think keeping a number that low in capital outlay would be sustainable. So I've moved that to about $575 each year going forward. And then our other objects, the vast majority of our other objects come through our annual audit expenditures, our tax collection fees. The county takes a fee for the collection of taxes to pay their people who take care of that. We have election expenses, different things of that nature, liability insurance. So a little bit higher than we've been, but not significantly off. And lastly, where we are when we look at our fund balance. So again, the savings that we saw this past year with COVID, we've seen directly push off the deficit in 2024 over to 2025. Again, it has compounding effects on us, so we're able to push that to 2025. In an ideal world, you know, we may be able to push that to 2026, depending on how cautious we are on our spending, as well as how lucky we get with increases in like health insurance and some other costs of that nature. So, you know, I like showing the graph there. We try to show an ideal fund balance is about 3 months of reserves of cash on hand. We've been very, very fortunate in the district here to be able to carry over that. And we're looking at right around 2022, 2023 that we would cross that line, dropping down, and then ultimately where we would be in the negatives. So we've talked about being on the ballot. We've had those conversations. We're going to want to continue these conversations. You know, typically your opportunities are next year and calendar year 2021 would be in May or in November. To remind the board, the way the process works is you have to file 90 days beforehand, and you need to have 2 resolutions before you file. So typically speaking, you're looking, you know, you'd have to, if you wanted to go on in May, you'd probably do a first resolution in December and then a second in January, okay? And then we would be filing at the end of January or so for the May election. If we want to look at November, we'd be looking at probably June and July, and then filing in late July, early August to get on the ballot for November. So, you know, that's kind of the process. The good thing is because we've been able to push that deficit off to 2025, it doesn't, you know, it appears that we could be on the ballot. If the board would choose to go on the ballot next year, it would appear that we'd be about in that same range that we had originally talked. I think that from some of the conversations that we had this past summertime, I think we were talking in maybe July or so, we would be somewhere in the range, we were talking in that 4.9 to 6.9 range. somewhere in there. You know, and I think that would set us up for, to be good so that we're not going back to the ballot in 3 to 5 years. It would push it more to an 8-year going back to the ballot, maybe longer, depending on how lucky we are with some of our expenditures. But, you know, that's just for some food for thought.
So if we go on the ballot, say next November, when would your first payments be? The following January or?
It would be. So regardless of when you pass in a calendar year, you get half of the collection in the following, you get the half of the collection in the following January, which could be the next fiscal year. If you're in May, if you're in November, it's the same fiscal year.
Okay.
And then you would start getting your full collection the following fiscal year after that.
So it, being that May still might be a little unknown, it doesn't really matter May or November, we'd still get the first payment in January, is what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Are there other opinions on going on the ballot?
The downside per waiting till November is if we needed to do a second attempt, we would have to be pushing it into 2022. So if we went in May, we would have a second attempt then in November if we needed it.
That's correct. When you're looking at doing in May, you do get 2 bites at the apple, okay? If you go in November only, you're going to get, you know, obviously 1 bite.
And I know we made a decision last summer to not go on the ballot in November because of hardship within the community. What are your thoughts today with regard to that?
Talk to me in a week and a half.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
I think we should still plan to go, and I would rather it be November, just because I think we take more criticism by trying to, you know, the May primaries are never as, I don't think that many people come, and we've always, in the past, people have kind of been negative if we put a levy up in May. I don't know why, but
Turnout tends to be.
yeah,
much
turnout
lower.
is smaller. and
Turnout
everything.
tends to be much lower in the May timeframe.
Yeah.
November seems to make more sense. It also gives us more planning time.
It'll be a good turnout next November because everyone on city council, or pretty much everyone on city council and the mayor will be up for
And
reelection.
you and I.
And you and I. That is
And they'll
correct.
come for that, right?
Yeah,
So city council is up too?
yeah, we're in the
Okay.
same cycle as they.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is that, I just think November is a more logical time. I think we look a little bit more positive doing it in November than May. And I do think we need to put one up. I mean, we just, you know,
I mean, not much, oh, I'm sorry, not much has changed from our last conversation
no.
to today. And if anything, I would say that it's gotten worse in some regards. And we have no idea what's going to happen as we go into the winter. I mean, it really kind of hit the fan in March and April for the schools. And if we're already cycling in that area, the snowball might be even bigger this January or February than it was last March. So again, I don't think that much has changed as relates to the same reasons we were using before as to why you guys didn't want to go in May.
Well, and either way, we're, when we look at May or November, I mean, we're very fortunate that the district would be operating for roughly 15 years since it last passed a operating levy, which was in May
2006.
May 2nd of 2006. So even if you went in May, you'd be looking at nearly exactly 15 years in between operating. Now, we have had bond issues, and obviously, like we've seen with the opening of the new elementary school, that has helped us control our costs. And that is, we realized a significant savings by being able to consolidate staff in the 4 buildings. So that's helped us, but it's really, especially a district that is so gets so little in state foundation funds. And being a 5% state share index school district, it's really unheard of to go that long between levies.
So it's been since '06. We need it on the agenda for next year, next calendar year. It sounds like November would be the time that we'd do it.
November is an opportunity because, I think that when we talked about this past summer, looking at this year, I think one of the concerns is we wanted to have proper planning time.
Right.
So, if we start looking now at November, that gives us a full year to really start working through the process, to start communicating it to the public, to start working with a levy campaign, raise funds for a campaign. That would give us that full year that, I think that has been expressed as being important.
Any other questions, comments with regard to district finances?
No, I would just say that Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Kraft, and I sat down with Mr. Goggin as well and went through a lot of this a few weeks ago.
No, just a week ago,
Just
last
a week
Monday,
ago.
yeah.
And went into even more detail as to
And what did you say?
went into more detail and spent a fair amount of time on this. So everything that Mr. Hopkins is presenting, I would feel very confident. I'm very confident with what he's presenting.
Yeah, I just want to touch on a couple little things real quick. What you're going to find, again, for people watching this, what you're going to find in board docs on the resolution for the 5-year forecast, you'll see the 5-year forecast in a couple different formats. You'll see my full assumptions. I strongly encourage people, when they're looking at the forecast, to really understand it, you need to look at the assumptions that we've taken in there. It's got a lot of graphics in it. It seems long, but again, it's very graphically based. I think it's a fairly easy read to go through it. The other piece is in there, we also have our quarter 1 update, and we're really right about where we should be on our expenses when we look at this year. We break it up by quarter. So for right now, we're looking at July, August, and September. And we're at, I think, 23% of our expenditures from where we should be for the year. So we're really targeted spot on right now. So I feel in a good place with the numbers that we're presenting here.
Thank you.
The last thing I want to point out is in the assumptions, you'll also note that this year, again, this is just a challenging year, and I know that that's Captain Obvious making that statement here with 2020. A couple funds that I want to talk about that may have an impact on general fund dollars, okay, is, as the board's aware, in June, we did some advances or transfers, okay? And there's 3 funds I want to specifically talk about tonight, just to bring it to your attention, is one, when we look at our athletic funds, okay? Athletic funds, the vast majority of revenue is generated through ticket sales, okay? So, we want to be aware that we still have expenses for our athletic program, but we have very little revenue coming in. It's nothing to the same level that we have been in the past, as we're tied to on how many, our capacity that we're allowed to have by law right now. A second area that I want to look at is our cafeteria program. Our cafeteria program has run on its own for many, many years. It's been a great program. It has run in the black. Dave Kosovar and Lisa Zuck have done a really nice job running, overseeing the cafeteria program. Our staff has been fantastic. Unfortunately, as we finished out the school year without students, we had expenses. And then this year, right now, we're not seeing the revenue being generated that we have in the past. And it's very, very early. So this is just a small warning. This isn't a panic, okay, on where we are. But it's a small warning on how what may happen. And if we don't see increases in our revenue in our food service program, we may need to transfer funds from general fund to support the food service program for the remainder of the year. And then also our Project Link program. Again, a fantastic program who our Project Link coordinator, Mike Waters, does an amazing job. I think all of the board members here know full well what a great program that is. Unfortunately, they're struggling as well to try to stay balanced during this pandemic and the changes that have been kind of thrust upon them. We are looking for alternative revenue to help support that program, but it is an area that I want to just bring up that if things don't change and if we're not able to utilize alternative revenue, we may need to come back to the board about, again, transferring money into those funds. So those are the 3 that I'm most worried about. but this pandemic is having a significant impact on a number of areas, including other funds.
Sure. Thank you. And as you touch on a link, it just reminds me of the many emails we received over the weekend, and that is Mr. Waters does an excellent job there, and we heard many, many positive comments with regard to link. Any other questions, thoughts, comments regarding district finances? We are going to move on to permanent improvement projects. And Mr. Hopkins, will you be leading that?
Yeah, I'll start it off here. I'm going to ask Mr. Kosovar to come up
Sure.
as well. And if you turn on that mic, if it's not already on, and I apologize, Mr. Kosovar, I'm not going to have you on camera, but you'll be the voice from, on the side of the stage. So I appreciate that. In front of you here tonight, you have a sheet here, and I'm holding it up for you to see. This is our kind of the 15 areas that we want to, and again, I'm not looking to go through each one of these one by one.
Right.
I'm not looking to put a prioritized list together with the board, but I'm looking for some general direction and guidance from the board on what the board's feelings are moving forward. A little background real quick is our PI fund was passed in 2016 in November when we went on the ballot for our new elementary school. It was 0.8 mils and generates roughly $1.1 million per year. We've been using it to support a number of things from bus purchases to technology. We also used it to do what we call manuscript debt of about $1 million to help finish off the elementary school with some upgrades that we wanted to keep with better windows, better lighting, long-term investments so that we wouldn't have to replace them as quickly going forward. So we've used PI to really support our infrastructure and our buildings. Currently, as it stands today, we have about $1.2 million in unencumbered cash in our PI fund, okay? And we expect to have an additional $500,000 or thereabouts come in January, February, March, April time, the other collection that we get, the tax collections that we get later in the year. Now, that's about 1.7 million overall. From that 1.7 million, I need to let you know that first and foremost, in April, I think it is, May or April, we have $100,000 of that manuscript debt due. So we would need to automatically remove that $100,000 from that 1.7. So we're really down to about 1.6 for this year. And then first thing in July, I have a bus lease payment due. I think it's about $160,000, $170,000. So for the sake of argument, I'm going to just round it to $200,000 at this point. So instead of being 1.7, we're 1.6 with the manuscript debt, and then 1.4 when we look at making that payment for the bus lease. Even though the bus lease is in fiscal year 2022, because it'll be in July, I'm going to need cash on hand to make that payment because we won't have new collections coming in until July or later.
Can you touch on the manuscript cash?
Yeah, so the manuscript debt was essentially it's a loan out of our bond retirement fund, okay, of $1 million. That's we pledged to support with PI funds.
Got it.
To pay for those upgrades in the elementary school that we wanted to keep.
Thank you.
It's a 10-year bond, or it's actually a 5-year bond that we intend to roll over into for 5 more years. We're setting it up to do $100,000 per year, and interest is due at the 5-year mark. That would also have to be paid back. Just a quick note on that, the interest that we pay back on that is interest that ultimately goes back to us, okay? It would initially go directly into general fund because that's a bond retirement fund, interest goes into general fund, but the board could move it back to PI if they so chose to at that time.
Thank you.
So we're really looking at about $1.4 million that we have for the remainder of this school year out of our PI fund. You're going to see on the list here some significant projects that we're looking at and some of the big dollar ones that we're looking at right now. On the sheet that you have in front of you, I want to point out this does not include technology. What we had originally planned for with our PI funds is to set aside a sizable money for technology, purchases, upgrades, ongoing maintenance of our equipment to keep things up to a quality level. Dr. Zagray and his staff have done a phenomenal job for years, including many years before I was here, of really working on a shoestring budget. buying refurbished items, things like that. He's done a really great job, but we've been trying to purchase better, newer equipment and keeping it more up to date by pledging PI funds. So that does not include your PI funds. That does not include the tech funds within this budget that you're looking at here. It's not really a budget within the items that we're looking at for discussion tonight. So I'm going to actually turn it over to Mr. Kosovar here. If you'd briefly go through these real quick, and then we'll take questions from the board.
Absolutely. So on the permanent improvement expenditure list, we ranked them from the price tags highest to lowest. You'll see the Dover campus traffic reconfiguration at $1.8 million. A Parkside building, I kind of grouped this together for Parkside, which is a building purchase back from the city, roof renovation and parking lot resurfacing, and that's at $1.5 million. Athletic field renovations, $800,000. That's at the high school varsity and softball fields. The demolitions of our elementary schools, Bassett, Holly Lane, were $300,000. And work at Hilliard Building would be $300,000 as well. Here at Parkside, we do have some remediation that needs to occur, some ceiling tiles, some ductwork. That's price tagged at $150,000. Bus replacements, $88,000. Roof replacement, renovation. That's the older roofs that are at the high school site. We still do have a couple old roofs there at our field house building and our ticket booths over at the football field. That's at $87,000 estimate. We do have a last sign that needs to be placed still at our Dover campus, much like at the high school and at the elementary school. That's at $55,000. Tennis court has some resurfacing that needs to be done and some cracks that need to be filled. That's estimated at $49,000. And then finally, we do have a intercom clock and bell system at Dover Intermediate School that has been failing. That is a price tag of $30,000.
Mr. Kosovar, could you, were you able to break out what Dover, to take it down, it would cost just to take Dover down?
Oh, just
out of that 1.8, that includes, I'm guessing, the raising of the building?
It does. I believe that was right around $300,000. Yeah, $250,000 to $300,000.
Thanks.
So some of the things that may be on here that's a surprise, I know we've had some communication, but maybe a surprise to the community at least, is David mentioned here mold remediation here at Parkside. Dave, would you explain real quick why that's on here and why we're looking at that?
Yes, we had discovered that over the course of probably about the last couple months to half a year, there was water that was getting into the building structure. Most of it was through the roof, through leaks, an older roof. We also had some HVAC equipment that during the summertime would carry some moisture through the building. As we started to see these leaks progress, we noticed that the diffusers and ceiling tiles in parts of the building were becoming dirty. We decided to take a closer look at that, had a external company come in, do some testing, and found that we did have mold growth in our ceiling tiles and some of our diffusers for air distribution through the system. We did check with them. It is not the harmful black mold. It is common mold. However, it is still an irritant. It is still something that needs to be addressed and taken out to make sure we have a safe and clean environment for the occupants of the building. The price tag of $150,000 was to remove the ceiling tile in the infected areas, to clean ceiling tile grid, to clean ductwork, to remediate the mold from parts of the system to bring the building back to a comfortable level for the occupants.
Mr. Kosovar, can you tell us the extent of storage that we have here at Parkside?
The extent of the what?
Things that we store as a district.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, so Parkside is our central offices for the district. Not only the superintendent and the treasurer's office, which are here, but we do have technology, curriculum, HR, the business office, special education offices are here. So really the hub of the district offices and departments are in this building. We do store records and other items here as well.
Okay. And is the storage of stuff, if I may call it that, is it extensive, and where is most of that?
It is extensive. It is spread throughout the building.
Okay.
It is stored. A lot of it is stored in offices that the people use and occupy.
Okay.
But we do have other general bulk storage in the building as well.
Okay. Thanks.
So I was going to, maybe it's a good time to talk about maybe the long-term home for the Board of Ed office.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, looking at the numbers, we're getting pretty close to $1 million if we're going to stay here. And that's just the improvements we would have to make. And if we wanted to stay here longer, and if we wanted to buy it, it would be another $700,000. We talked about this in Finance Committee meeting as well. And logically, it doesn't make sense to spend close to $1 million on a building that you do not own. And with that, we asked Dr. Goggin and Mr. Kosovar what would be particular options for the district. And after looking at all the different options available, Hilliard seemed like it was a good alternative for relocating the board office down to Hilliard. So,
And why was that?
why was that?
Yeah.
One, because we don't want to spend $1 million on a building that we don't own. Two, it's a building that we do own, and it gives us the flexibility to do what we need to do with it. And it still gives us the capacity in the way of storage. I'm assuming it gives us the capacity for 35 staff that I think we have in the building, and it would give us the ability to continue to do link in that building as well. So.
We had conversations about multiple locations, one being Hilliard, one being Holly Lane, and we even talked a little bit about the field house at the high school. We really like the Holly Lane building, the location. The issue with specifically the location is it's great for us because we go back and it's a beautiful little setup there, but it may be difficult for people to access us. And being on Hilliard Boulevard, especially for people who may not be familiar with all of our previous elementary schools, finding a school on Hilliard is easier than going back in a neighborhood and finding a school back there. So we did lean towards that, and we did talk about Project Link as well. Project Link, sometimes, last summer they ran out of the elementary school. This summer, if they want to run out of Hilliard, they can. The proximity to Clegg Park, also, if they have kids there, can go over and utilize Clegg Park. Just kind of as we looked at everything, location was really strong for Hilliard. And, and also it's a building that doesn't have the roof problems that this one does.
And I would say the other thing is, Dr. Goggin reminded me, we have some structural issues at Bassett.
It's true.
That would, as there are here a little bit, that we would have to contend with if we decided to move it over to there. And then obviously, what Dr. Goggin just explained about Holly Lane. So, and I think that Mr. Kosovar would be able to explain that even though Hilliard is older,
It is.
It's in very good shape structurally for the age of the building.
It is in good shape for the age of the building. A solid building that can be renovated to meet the needs of the district, yes.
Is there a good reason that we would want to pay for the expenses of fixing up Parkside and eventually purchasing it, or do we just?
Well,
go?
there is a higher cost for fixing up Parkside. Parkside is right around 70,000, a little over 70,000 square feet. Just to fix the roof itself, if you have a complete tear off and put in a new roof, is going to be in the line of, $600,000 and $650,000. If you do the same with any of our other buildings, 40,000 square foot over at Hilliard or 35,000 square feet over at Holly Lane, the price difference right there will be a little bit of a price offset that you won't have to spend on roofing. The bigger building is more costly to take care of, especially with the age. Parkside also does have settling cracks in the gymnasium in this back section. That's been monitored, and we keep watching it. But much like Bassett, it does have the cracking in some of the walls that are a concern for long-term use.
So do we want to keep it? Is that what we need to discuss that?
I don't think we have to decide that now.
Okay,
I mean, that's something when we leave, we have 2 years.
okay.
Right.
So I would say that would be something, what I would recommend is that we talk about a location of central office, and we decide where a permanent central office would be. In Finance Committee with Mr. Finucane, he brought up some of the same points he brought up here today, and we've moved. So from the Red Brick Building to the old City Hall to Parkside, and so we need to choose a spot where central office is going to be for a period of time.
Ms. Lozinski, I think about your question. I like your question. I guess the only reason is to accumulate real estate, but we have a lot of real estate, of course, that we're not using.
Right.
I think about why Hilliard, the central location. I think one of the reasons we celebrate Mr. Kosovar is he's really good at what he does, and I trust his thoughts and his review. He's taken us on numerous tours over at Hilliard and really all the buildings, and has always pointed out structurally how good and sound it is. And so I like the idea of Hilliard.
Oh, I agree. How long would it take to have it ready for you guys to move there?
Yeah, it will take a little bit to get it up and running. We have already started just to look at getting some of the loose furnishings out of the building. I would have had to do that anyways. We are auctioning off things from Holly Lane, for example. So trying to empty the building was first on the list. But it will take weeks to get contractors through to get the building back commissioned and ready for occupants again.
Sorry, do you have an estimate as to what it's going to cost? Obviously you have to have movers, but there's going to be other things to get the building in great shape.
We're working on that pricing right now. The amount of money that it may take to just say fix some of the mold, remediate the mold from this location, and some of the repair work on the roof could easily be offset into another facility like Hilliard, and the work be done there, and then we could be there permanently for a great length of time.
And that's what I was thinking, is because obviously one of the items on the list is the raising of Hilliard, which would be about $300,000. So instead of raising it, spending that money, you're maybe spending $200,000 to $300,000 into improvements into the building, which could hopefully be the very long-term place for central office.
Correct.
And does Hilliard have any mold?
It has, I did see in one location in a closet that we had a roof leak, and so we will take a look at that. Every one of our buildings has some roofing that needs to be checked every now and then. We'll spring a leak here and there. It's when it sits in an area that's unobserved, that doesn't get proper air circulation through it, is when it develops. So we did see that, and we will get that taken care of.
I think the other piece that goes to your question is the difference between this building, Parkside, and Hilliard is one of the main issues that we have here is the mold is above the ceiling and in the HVAC system. and we use a centralized HVAC, so it gets spread, compared to Hilliard that doesn't have ventilation system like this. It's individual classroom ventilation systems. So even in that case of a very specific area in a closet that we've noticed, it doesn't necessarily spread all through the building like we're struggling right now with this.
So is this an immediate danger to the people in this building by?
It is not a critical health hazard. If a person is allergic to mold, what we're told is that they will notice signs like a cold where you have watery eyes, itchy nose, itchy eyes, sore throat. Again, they said it's not the black mold, it's not the hazardous one, and it's more like a cold symptoms that they would be distributing or be having.
So we have some time, staff will be safe, and we'd have time for a plan to work itself out.
We do have time, and I talked with our maintenance and custodial staff. We're not going to be disturbing any of the areas. Again, we don't want to promote the distribution of it through the system, so we're just going to keep hands off on it in this location until we get another one up and running.
So I guess at this time, Dr. Goggin will plan as appropriate with his team to make the move when it's ideal for him to put that together. And obviously, we won't be putting any money into Parkside at this time until we can make a decision as to what we want to do with the building later.
As I look at the rest of the list, it seems imperative that we work on the Dover campus. We've been working on it for some time. That, of course, has a $1.8 million price tag associated with it. Feelings of the board when it comes to improving and finishing the Dover campus, including the traffic reconfiguration.
Is there a way we can split that maybe over 3 years and do, $600,000 a year and kind of move forward in a less costly chunk?
Yeah, there are ways. I know that we talked a little bit about maybe having a phase approach to the Dover campus, just because of where we're falling with the weather. It may come naturally, where when Dover Elementary comes down, maybe do a little bit of lot reconfiguration while the weather is still good. When we get into the winter, it'll carry us into next spring, maybe pick it back up at that time, which may carry us over into another fiscal year. But it's something I think we could talk with our construction manager about.
Yeah, we're currently using Icon to work on the demolition of the Dover Elementary School, as well as they've partnered with GPD to look at redesigning the front traffic. The one thing that we would want to be cautious on is we'd want to work with them to see if breaking it up, over 2 years or 3 years, what does that do on our costs? An example would be is if you're at 1.8 and they're like, okay, yeah, we can break it up over 3 years, but you're going to go to 2.2 because you've got to remobilize every year and there's different things. And this is not much, but an example would be is as they take down Dover, the way we can save about $10,000, again, not much in a $1.8 million project, but we can save $10,000 if we know how the parking's going to look, because when they go take down the building, they can grade it right at that time for the parking lot, for the section of the new parking or new traffic pattern that will go over the existing building. If we don't know, if we're not settled on exactly how it's going to work, they're just going to do a general grading, and then you're going to have to come back and regrade it on that next section of the project when you're ready to do that. So we'd want to work with them to see what would make sense and also be most cost effective, so that we're not incurring significant additional cost.
I'm going to make some assumptions here, Mr. Kosar, so you kind of tell me if I'm not assuming it's right. So obviously $300,000, if we just go in and make a decision to raise the building, it's around $300,000. We go in, we raise it, clean it up, plant seed, and it's grass. And then we can come back either next year, the year after, or at some point, and spend the remainder of the dollars, assuming what Mr. Hopkins said, that the cost does not go up significantly.
Correct.
But I have to believe that other than the $10,000, maybe with some grading, that a reconfiguration of all of that is one project. And a raising of the building. I don't want to say anyone can come in and raise a building, and I'm not even sure if ICON was going to be raising it, or if they were contracting it out themselves.
No, they just oversee it, so they
Yeah.
would contract it out.
So whether it's grass or whether it's done right now, it can, I'm going to say it can easily be split up.
It could be split up, as Mr. Hopkins had mentioned. There's some economies of scale when they do something the first time to get it prepped for the next phase of a project. We may lose a little bit of that, but yes, I believe it could be split up.
But I guess I would, in what you said there is, if we feel very positive that we're going to do it, then they can go ahead and start as they take the building down. They could prep it as needed, so that it's already done for that next phase. But obviously, the next phase, I can only see that being in two phases, if I understand.
I believe that's correct.
Right. So.
I would
And I wanna-
encourage this project moving forward and for the Dover campus and completing it.
I can't hear you. Can you speak?
I would encourage completing the Dover campus reconfiguration, because while things are working right now, we have to remember we only have 40% of the students on the property right now coming in at one time. And while it's working, and I've made an effort and reached out to a number of parents who do drop off and pick up, and my understanding is the pickup line can go pretty close to Bassett Road right now. It hasn't hit Bassett Road, but it's getting there's about 10 to 15 car spaces. But again, we only have 40% of the students there. So I'm wanting to be optimistic that this spring we're going to have everybody back on campus. And I fully understand we're coming into winter and construction is going to not necessarily be able to be doable, but I would encourage us to move forward with this project to make it a priority, because we've been talking about it now for 2 years. I mean, the goal was to have it done by the fall.
Yeah, I think I agree. We've been talking about it as an option to potentially help alleviate some of the traffic concerns that the community has experienced in Dover. But that campus has been running the way it's running for 7 years now.
Correct.
So for 7 years, it's been running the way it's running. Maybe not exactly today's, but drop off in the back, drop off in the front, buses up in the front. I agree that we should somehow separate out the buses and the cars. Luckily, we have never had any major accidents or fender benders or anything there. It's a frustration probably for the drivers. I'm sure it's a frustration for the parents. But it's 7 years that we've been doing it. So I look at it as it's important, but I look at it also as like an upgrade. It's 7 years that we've been doing it this way. So do we need to spend, in one fiscal year, $1.8 million to help solve a problem that we really think we have, yet over the last 7 years, I can personally say I've never gotten a phone call that the traffic is horrible on Bassett or it's horrible on Dover and you guys need to do something about it. If anything, I've gotten phone calls, and this is really on no one else that was here, on the traffic flow of the high school. If you ask the community, would you rather have a better traffic flow at the high school or a better traffic flow options at DIS Burleson campus, they're all going to say the high school. It's not intuitive at all. Very confusing for anyone that visits.
Yes, I agree, yeah.
And, so, and again, the flow when Burnison, I'm sorry, when Burnison turned into DIS and the new Burnison was created, all of that was evaluated based on what the flow was going to be. There's a huge car line in the back for parent to drop off and or pick up. The one up front, not as good. I think maybe the idea was down the road, they could reconfigure it with if something happened with Dover, but we weren't even thinking that far at the time. 7 years ago, there was not even a thought of taking the elementaries into one. So again, I don't want to say that the reconfiguring is not important, but I also seem to think that part of it is it's a solution to a problem that is not as great as some of the other stuff that we have in the district. That's just my thoughts.
I guess my big difference is I almost had my child hit twice in that parking lot.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what?
My child was almost hit twice in that parking lot where she was crossing where she was supposed to, but parents started driving without even looking out their front window. So I see the security risk to our students, to our parents, to the bus drivers, to our staff, across the board. We've been telling parents basically for 4 years since we passed the last bond and to consolidate the schools, we will fix this parking situation, the drop off and pick up at Dover campus. And I really do think that this is something we need to make as a priority.
I've had the good fortune, Mr. Kosovar has invited me to a number of get-togethers of neighbors. It does happen to be my ward, and I have chatted with those residents that live close to that campus and wanting it to be finally finished. They do talk about the need for both Bassett residents as well as Dover residents that say they would like that the schools get their long-term plan in place to get traffic flowing there. Those residents at those meetings have said they've been at risk. Students walking to school have been at risk, and they would like to have it done. Councilman O'Donnell has shared that with me as well because that happens to be his ward. I know City Council has talked about it as well. Something else they mentioned too was just the gate that we have over at Bassett and a solution to that as well. Some say that they would love to have, for example, buses head in off of Bassett and cars up front, that would solve a lot of issues, say, on Bassett, very similar to how we do it at Westlake Elementary School, buses in the back, so to speak, autos off of the more of a major road, say Dover Center. So just those are some of the things I hear just as being in the ward. I know I've also had the opportunity to go to those public meetings and look at a number of plans, and GPD with their traffic plan is looking at, I believe it's the latest plan that they've shared, and it does involve a pretty interesting flow of car traffic off of Dover Center and bus traffic off of Bassett. It's kind of interesting and would seem to solve a lot of those issues, again, if we had that traffic pattern in place. I don't know what's involved with raising a building and then allowing it to settle, or if they bring in machinery or water or whatever to make that happen, but that latest plan does involve a roadway driving over, say, the old Dover Elementary, and again, some reconfiguration of traffic. But it's a very detailed, well thought out plan that, working with residents, they've come to that as one of the solutions. And again, residents say, hey, we'd love this to happen. We'd love it to be done. But I'm open to hear, again, if there's a plan out there that, same cost, maybe spreading it out over time. If it's a viable plan, great. But I know that there are residents that say, man, we just love to get all those, we'd love to get that campus finished. And it's been on our minds, say the Bassett folks, for a long time.
And I can appreciate the the comments from the folks that live on Bassett. But the reality is they have less traffic now because there's no more Dover Elementary. All right? There's 2 schools there now instead of 3, which means it's not exact, but it's probably at least 25% fewer buses that are going to the front of the campus there, from versus Dover, and parents driving. The community was involved very much so at the development of DIS Bernison campus. I know it was before everyone, but Dr. Keenan met with all of those folks over there. There was lots of feedback as to how it was going to flow, including having a gate back there that would be locked so people wouldn't do the cut through, which is what they were, a lot of the residents were afraid of. But again, in I don't know how many years it's been, 7 years. One, I don't know if you have different people living there, different opinions, but the opinions of everyone that were given back 7 years ago as to this is how we think the campus should work. Now the campus has one less building, less students, less cars, less traffic. Again, I come back to, are we trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist? I'm not trying to dismiss any safety issues, that may exist, with kids in parking lots and everything. But at the same time, it's a lot of money to spend for something that was already laid out 7 years ago and designed by experts. Not that we're not using experts, obviously, but they took everything into consideration. They took traffic patterns from coming off of Dover. They took traffic patterns off of Bassett. And they incorporated in the flow of elementary, the flow of Bernison, the flow of DIS. So again, if anything, we have less traffic once everyone is back in school.
So forgive me, are you saying that we don't want to do just leave the traffic pattern as is? Or?
I would say it could be on a middle burner type of thing. I don't want to necessarily say that it's not needed. But I can't see that it's as high a priority that we would want to spend that kind of money for something that's solving a problem that we don't have a problem with. Again, those are just my opinions, but I don't see people coming in the door here complaining about the traffic on Dover because of our schools or on Bassett because of the schools. I see people coming in complaining about a lot of other things, but never in 7 years about that.
We had the meeting over in the media center, and there were folks that
we invited in, right?
And I do get texts sometimes in the middle of the night saying, "Hey," literally, Friday night saying, "Hey, the gate's open. Why is the gate open? Get the gate closed," kind of a thing. So I do hear from those residents. All of us make ourselves available, and I make myself available, and I do get those texts and those calls, and so I do hear those complaints.
Dr. Goggin, how many times have you walked into a council PTA meeting and literally the first thing out of everybody's mouth is, you've got to fix Dover Center? Well, not this year, because this is an unusual year.
So I guess what I'm hearing, we've talked about Dover, and I do think there are issues at the Dover campus, and I do get a good amount of complaints like Liz is talking about. And I think to kind of look at it, but I think the conversation is going to evolve if we have Dave move to some other items while he's standing at the podium for us talking. But I think we're in a situation where we're going to have to budget. We don't have the money to do everything on this list.
Right.
Correct.
And I think what we need to do is we need some guidance. So when you're looking at me, Todd, and Dave, to hear these conversations, is it something we go back and do our homework and say, what would it look like to step this out?
Yeah.
And put it over 3 years, like Dr. Stoll said earlier. And if we can push it out, is it the $10,000 cost? Will it cost, $200,000, $300,000 more? I don't know those numbers, so for us to really think about that, I think we need to get those and to be able to do it. So we're hearing that, look at it and make sure it's a problem that we're solving, step it out and kind of see what we want to do. I don't have a problem taking that back and doing that. But if I can kind of have us continue to go through, because we have how much money, Todd, in our permanent improvements?
1.4.
$1.4 million.
Correct.
And we have $5.5 million worth of items on this list. So I think we should.
So, yes, and
Well, and again,
I'll go ahead.
tonight-
And going along with
Yeah,
Dr. Goggins.
tonight's important because it's the first time I'm hearing that we don't want to finish the Dover campus. I always thought
Mostly
that
we
was.
just-
What's that?
What's the traffic pattern now at?
So right now,
So what-
all right, so what we did, we've been working, we designed this year to lead into the new traffic pattern. And so our original thought, based on the conversations John referred to when this campus was being put together, was that buses were in the front and cars were in the back, and no cars were supposed to be coming in off of Bassett. So that's the way we designed it this year.
No buses were supposed to come.
Yeah, what did I say? Did I misspeak?
You said.
Okay, so no buses were supposed to come in off of Bassett. So this year, we've kept it where just cars, so we've put all of the cars in the back and all the buses in the front. Pretty much mirrored what we have at Westlake Elementary School. And, because originally we thought we would keep that pattern where the buses are in the front and then the cars are in the back, but then as we went through this process, the people who lived over on Bassett started to say, well, actually, we'd prefer to have the buses come in, which I think is smart because there's fewer of them. You're going to have hundreds of cars, and you're only going to have about 25 buses. How many buses?
Yeah, about 22.
22 buses coming. So right now, the pattern is, as it has been before, cars in the back, buses in the front. The only difference is we're trying not to allow any cars coming in off the front to have the cross pattern. So buses in front, cars in the back is our current pattern.
How's that going with the cars not coming up front?
I'd have to ask, have you heard anything on the middle campus? Yeah, not quite sure. You're going to have those. And one of the issues on why we like the idea of having the buses in the back, another thing we like is just like using Hilliard instead of Holly Lane, people are going to drive to a main road. So if you are going to have somebody, a grandpa or uncle or even a parent that typically doesn't drop off a kid, they're typically not going to go to the back of the building off Bassett. They're going to go where the stoplight is, where the front of the building
The back is primarily for parents.
Yeah, we kind of know the drill.
Yep.
So, but I think it's been going pretty well once Bassett Road has been fixed, because they did a great job with it. It just overlapped with us for a bit and caused some heartburn, so we did have people going to the front. But I think it's getting better.
So it sounds like you're going to go to Icon and we'll get some more information from Icon and you'll share that with us?
Yes, we could get some more information from
Awesome.
them.
Do you want to move on to some of the other items?
I think I'm going to, just try to speed things along real quick.
Yeah.
What I heard so far is that at this particular moment, we're not looking at the Parkside, money that we have set aside on here.
I would think we'd like to move to Hilliard,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, I
The
think
board
that-
building to Hilliard?
We're going to move forward in that. There is
Yep.
that cost that we estimate about $300,000 to move into
Right.
Hilliard, so
Is
that's
that
something
the
that we're
move
looking
or
at.
the demolition cost?
What's that?
Is that the move or the demolition cost?
That's what we're factoring that right now to be the moving expenses, the re-networking cables. We have to do some work on HVAC, a little bit of roof work. That's kind of our all-encompassing costs right
Got it.
now as we currently factor.
Is that clear?
I'm going to jump all the way to the bottom
Yeah.
real quick, okay? The intercom system at DIS, we feel this is a safety issue.
Yep.
We would like to move forward with this issue. Is anyone objected to that?
Nope.
Okay. I'm going to jump a couple up here. The sign in front of the Dover campus, is that something we can hold for now?
Yes.
I think that should be held until we figure out what's going on with the configuration.
Oh, that's a good point.
Okay.
God knows how it could flow.
Yeah.
So that's a hold for right now. Moving up above that, Dave, the roof replacement at the field house, is that something we can hold, or is that an immediate need?
No, we could hold on that.
Okay, so I would also recommend we hold on that. Moving up to the bus replacement, Dave, are we down a bus right now, or can we push it off a little bit?
We do have an opportunity with a grant to get some of this matching dollars for this. So if we do purchase a new bus now, I believe it was at,
And I'll be honest, it's only about a $4,000.
it is
piece from
for,
the
it's
state.
not
Yeah.
the entire amount.
Yeah, not at all.
That is
It's a
correct.
very, very
5%.
small.
We could push it back a little bit.
Okay. And we may look and see, I know we had some funds that were collected for transportation. We may look and see if there's a way we could fund it in another fashion. But we'll hold that one for right now. I'm also going to assume that the Holly Lane demolition is a hold for right now.
I agree with that.
Agree?
Bassett is a little bit different, okay? Bassett, we've already done the abatement in Bassett as part of our GMP number
Yep.
5 that we did. It's still, at least for the most part, it's not like Dover where we had to take the roof off and a number of different things. Bassett is still relatively intact, but it is not habitable in any way, as we've taken out all lighting in it, we've cut utilities.
Correct,
we've done
all utilities
all
are
those
off.
things.
Could
So
it
I would
hold?
strongly encourage not to wait long on Bassett.
So
Okay.
next fiscal year?
If the board's okay with that, I would absolutely encourage looking at that in fiscal year '22.
So we could plan for it in July?
It's a possibility, yep. Is that okay?
That's okay.
I'm going to jump back down to the tennis courts, okay? Because now we have if I'm reading the sheet that you have in front of me, or the sheet I have in front of me correctly, we have 3 really that are left to talk about. 2 of them are athletics, and then we have debated the traffic circle quite a bit, but we'll finish on that one. Right now, the tennis courts, Dave, can you explain when last time they were resurfaced and what the issue is right now?
They were resurfaced in 2013. After the new school was built, they had put new tennis courts in, so it was a brand-new surface. In the time between now and then, we do have a settling crack that has occurred. It happens. It's between 2 joints of asphalt that was laid down. By resurfacing it, they'll put a scrim layer down on top of it, and then they'll put a coating on top of that. It will effectively make the court like new again, approximately about 7 years. Right now, that crack is developed into a pretty large one through the weathering, and it wouldn't last too much longer. The play on it's going to be pretty difficult right now, even in its current condition.
So that is something we feel strongly that needs to be addressed.
I do, yes.
Is this something that could be repaired in time for the spring season?
It would have to be repaired in the springtime. We lost the time frame here this fall. We need at least 55 degrees for about a week and dry weather, so it's doubtful that we could get anything in now.
Once it's done, how much time do you need before it can be played upon?
So after that week, it's pretty much.
Yeah, I believe it's ready after 7 days. So once they get completed, it'll be playable.
So is that something that we can move forward with?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So then the next one is our baseball fields. So I know Mr. Finucane had sent an email to the rest of the board members about we have started a committee on this.
Right.
We've looked at it with Mr. Kosovar, Mr. Cipollone, Mr. Finucane, and myself. What is the proposal right now is the $800,000 price tag is doing a knee wall in the back of for a backstop on each of the fields, doing poles instead of backstops, which would have netting, so it allowed balls to go straight up instead of overhangs. It would also put in some additional netting in areas where we're losing balls right now into the detention basin and even somewhat into the school itself. And it would also do a turf on the infield of both of those fields.
And as well, one of the issues that's come up from a variety of people is drainage.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, drainage.
To
It would
affect-
address some drainage issues that we have specifically behind
outside
the baseball field, outside the baseball.
Outside the field, actually, which right now are impacting the field.
Is that on the north side?
It would be, as you come down from the new softball field, the road there, all of that water flows down.
The water's sheeting off of our back driveway across first base foul line. It runs down towards the batter's box, and what's happening is we're getting a lot of erosion that's coming through across that home plate area, depositing of a lot of excess soils there. So it does make play difficult and field management pretty difficult on baseball.
And Mr. Hopkins was kind enough to go over to the field with me a while ago when we first started talking about this, and once the schools closed in March, all maintenance kind of stopped. Not just there, but in many cases. So softball, baseball fields have really not been maintained since last March. The girls is dirt, so it's as long as it's dry, it's playable. On the baseball field, it's a little different with what's going on over there. So that would be one thing that we have to just take into consideration. No matter what we do, we're going to need to spend some dollars on getting the field ready somehow.
That's correct.
Can we get a sponsor? Or, like we did for the football field? And
when I talked to Mr. Cipollone, he was going to talk with the athletic boosters, because one of the concerns that some of the baseball parents have had over the years is, if you look at the outfield fence, there's no advertising whatsoever. And if you go to almost any other high school around, if the whole backstop or the whole outfield is not covered, it's only missing one or two. And there's been, I'll call it a control thing with the boosters being able to do sponsorships for a variety of different things. So the boosters took care of all the sponsorships related to the football stadium and everything, and some other things. So there has been a lack of the ability to go out and sell that space, so to speak. Now, I don't know how much it would garner, signs on the back and or a naming rights type of thing, but it would definitely probably be enough to take care of maintenance for the outfield and keep up any additional costs that may be incurred going forward. Nothing says that we can't get a sponsor after the fact, because the field is not named today. There are a number of baseball fields that are out there that are named by, I'll just say Serpentini as one good example, but there are a number of other automobile companies, dealerships, and other companies as well that have sponsored baseball fields as well. So the opportunities are there. I'm not sure it would be at a level like we got at the high school for turf, or for for what we need from what we got from UH. But again, it would be more than enough to take care of maintenance for the outfield, maintenance for the dugouts, which we'll continue to need, because the dugouts are in solid condition, we'll call it.
They are correct.
So can this project be split up into two phases?
Well, the one thing that we've talked about two different ideas of two different phases. So one phase that we had been talking about was you do everything except the turf. So you would do the knee wall, you do the pipe or the poles, you do the netting, you take care of the drainage issue, and you would get at least the baseball field and softball field in playable condition for this spring. And then, say next calendar year or fiscal year, then you could come in and have the turf put in place. The other option that we were discussing today, and I don't know if we have an answer for it yet, but it was to do the baseball field as a complete project, say this year, and then next fiscal year you do the softball field as a complete project. So but we're trying to get information as to whether or not the company that we're leaning towards would lose any kind of economies of scale by doing it separately. Because obviously if they come in, they're going to strip both the fields. They're going to have the trucks there. They'll be able to haul all the dirt away at the same time. When they do the cement wall, knee wall, the cement company's going to come in. They're going to form them. They're going to pour them all at one time. So there are some economies of scale to do it in the first phase I described. I just don't know if there's a cost differential in the other way.
And I spoke with the firm that we're leaning towards when our group looked at all the respondents. They are working on a price to see if there is a difference. They don't have it for this meeting tonight, but they'll probably have something for us tomorrow at our video conference.
Okay. Well, one of the other, Dave, help me out here. We started with how many vendors?
We started with, I believe it was 6 or 7 vendors.
And then kind of got their information, kind of whittled it down to 3, got it down to 2. And the 2 that we're looking at, one of them is the organization that did our football field, Money Bay, and another one is called Vasco.
Vasco, correct.
What's interesting, though, about the Vasco proposal was they were very close in price, and we believe as well, and probably quality and what we anticipate to get. But Vasco made it pretty clear that we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we did not do it in one phase. Their fear was any improvements that you were to make in the first phase, such as the wall, you do the outside drainage, but you wouldn't be doing really any drainage inside, or maybe a little inside. The knee wall, that those improvements that you're making could potentially get impacted when you're bringing in heavy equipment and you're ripping everything out. You're ripping the whole infield out, which is basically just stripping all the dirt away and then putting in new stuff. That I don't want to say accidents happen, but the impression they gave me was they wouldn't do it. Every other vendor gave us a phase 1 and a phase 2 price. Vasco only gave us a phase 1 because they thought that it wouldn't be good for us. And since every other vendor gave us a 2-phase option, I can't think that they couldn't do it. I think, and again, their price was on the lower end. I think it was, again, more so that they didn't seem to think that the finished quality product of doing it in 2 phases would be nearly as good as if you were to do it in 1 phase. And that's kind of my thinking associated with it. So that's where I've asked Mr. Kosovar to say, well, is there a way to maybe just do 1 this year completely and 1 next year completely, so that they're good to go and that we're going to get the best quality.
And you're waiting on that answer?
Correct. We reached out to them today. They're going to get us an answer tomorrow about that
Nice.
timing.
I think, I mean, I love the plan. I love the idea. You and I have chatted about this a little bit. And I know in the last several months, a number of us have had the opportunity to work with Craig Catanzarite as well as Paul Nebraska on the Westlake Educational Foundation. And I think about their goal of getting turf at the football stadium and raising funds, partnering with the city, getting those big corporate sponsor to name the field and having signs up, and we're going to renew those signs soon. And I want to say those signs were signs that are up for a number of years and something along, I want to say $20,000 a sign up for a number of years, which is some significant money. And with regard to the plan, we know the expense, that the plan is in place, we know what it would be. Does it make some sense to, I know we've had conversations with the city, if the city might partner with us, and I know with the football field, we had those conversations with the city. Are there sponsors that would want to name the field and or have signs in the outfield, and is it time to have those conversations?
Well, I think those are all very viable, except for the city. Unfortunately,
Okay.
The city has made a commitment many times in the past. Reed Field.
So throw the city out.
As one. They're going to build a big giant baseball complex with the land that we traded with them.
I got to tell you, Reed kind of shut down with,
Yeah.
March.
Is that still on the,
I think it's something eventually, but they pretty much stopped many of their projects like that,
Yeah.
other than your infrastructure roads and those things.
Right.
But maybe worth at least having a conversation. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, any opportunity to have a conversation.
Sure.
Because again, Westlake Baseball League, which is run, Westlake Rec outsources their all baseball program to Westlake Baseball League. And once you hit 8th grade and they have a upper division, all of those games are played on the Westlake field as well.
Yeah. You want me to have a conversation with someone at the city?
If you seem to think
Okay.
you could make headway,
And-
yes.
and-
And I hate to be pessimistic about that.
Well, but, and also potential corporate sponsorship as well?
On the sponsorship as well, I think there's an opportunity. If we don't want to, say, spend the $800,000 in one fiscal year, there is the ability, as Mr. Hopkins has indicated, is what we did with the fixture, furniture, and equipment at the new elementary school, is we can take out, I'll call it a loan script for $800,000 over a 10-year period, dedicate $80,000 a year. The interest we pay, obviously, we pay back to ourselves.
I don't think we can do manuscript debt again. There are limitations on that, but we could do a TAN. We could do a TAN. A TAN is a tax anticipatory note. We could do a TAN. A TAN is a tax anticipatory note. It's essentially a loan that's taken out with a bank against future tax collections, and you can take it out for up to a 10-year period. And not that, we would look at a specific amount, but you could take it out for us. A maximum amount would be $5.5 million over a 10-year period by statutory limitation. So you could do that. That interest would be paid to the bank, and you do lose the interest payments on that. But there are ways that you could finance if you choose to finance. But I think manuscript debt, there are limitations. I think we
You think we're at the limits for it?
I think we did.
So as it relates to the sponsorship,
Yeah.
We don't have it today. If it's something that we seem to think we do definitely want to pursue, I would say that I think we do.
Okay.
Because if there's an opportunity to get some sort of dollars there, whether it be, for the field or for even the outfield and stuff, any of those funds that come in could be automatically geared towards and put into a fund to pay off the I'll just call it the loan, so that we're not coming up with $800,000
Yeah.
in our permanent improvement. Just like every year today, $100,000 of our PI fund goes towards the upgrades in the FFE over at the elementary school. So this would be, as just rude number, would be $80,000 a year. So on a 1.1 year PI, right?
1.1, correct.
So on a 1.1, 100,000 is automatically spoken for the next 8 years, 9 years?
Yeah, I think it's 8 years.
8 years. So you're really working with $1 million every single year in permanent improvements.
And we've also have the bus lease at least for another 3 years.
Yeah, which is 50.
170,
170?
yeah, give or take, yeah.
All right. And that's right. And that was the only other thing that was a
Those are the only ones
A
that are
commitment.
currently spoken for.
commitment. So now you're down to about 930 or 830,000. And again, as everyone had said, you have to take into consideration technology, any other upgrades and things like that of capital improvement items that need to be done. Which is again why we pushed to get the property or the permanent improvement when we did that.
But couldn't we also do technology out of the general operating fund? Or?
We can.
We
And I
can.
think the thing that we talked about, and I don't know if Todd wants to talk about it, but I'll tee it up. When we begin to take it, Todd just went through his 5-year forecast, and we've pushed out our deficit to 2025, potentially 2026. If we begin to take out of the general fund, then we're taking out of the money that we have there, and then that's times the 5 years that go through it. So we can do that, but once we start dipping into that general fund, then we impact our 5-year forecast. And you
You
can,
will, yeah. So even if you say, okay, we'll take, $500,000 a year and out of general fund and use it for whatever purpose. When we look at that deficit in 2025, well, now that's $2.5 million higher than it currently is projected to be. So it compounds as you work through it that way. Again, the general fund has very little restrictions on it, unlike PI that has very specific or your debt, collections. Again, the board can choose to do what the board wants to with general fund dollars. I just give great caution because it will affect your bottom line and you'll see it relatively quickly.
Okay, so John, my question, the two companies, one recommended doing it all in one phase, but Mommy was perfectly fine to do it in two, right?
Yeah.
So what was, they're not worried about it, the second phase influencing the first phase with the drainage pipe and all that? I mean, what was the difference in the two companies' reasoning there that?
Maybe I could help answer that.
Okay.
So Maumee Bay, in their schedule that they had for us, they felt that they could get started quicker in November, still get concrete for knee wall and posts and fencing in, do all their excavation work, and get that done before the weather started to turn. They said that they can get a really good start at getting the actual synthetic turf on the fields before the snow fell, as I'm quoting him. So for them to break it up into phases, they felt that they had the advantage in their organization to really fast put on a fast track the engineering and the plan work for the field through their offices. When I talked with Vasco, they did have a couple of subcontractors that they were working through. They were going to use a local firm, Benke Engineering, which if you remember Benke's name, they've done a lot of work with the school district on like the high school and middle school project. They're a landscaping engineering firm. They had a less optimistic time frame for their engineering design. They said that they would need up until December just to do all the drawings and to get their engineering correct for how they wanted to see the field. Our experience with Maumee Bay and working with the football field had proved to us at least that Maumee Bay in a similar fashion was able to jump onto a project, develop it through their offices and get it shovel ready much quicker than any of their competitors. So it bode well for us when we talked with them as to their ability to at least get this started, weather permitting, obviously, and to get it going to get a quicker completion.
And you haven't had any major difficulties with the work that Mommy Bay has done on the football field?
No, not at all. Matter of fact, the quality of the product, the quality of the installation exceeded our expectations. I got to admit, when the football field went in, it was a fast track as well in the springtime.
Right.
I was impressed by the way they ramped up to the project.
Okay, so my one concern is, and I know I'm probably in the minority on this, but I really don't want to see it, the baseball fields done, and then the following year, the softball, having had two granddaughters that played on those softball fields. And we have some graduates that are playing college softball. I'd like to see them all done together. And I know I'm probably in the minority, but I just don't want to shuffle off the girls and say, oh, yeah, we'll do the girls next year. You know, I don't know.
I'm going to jump in again real quick, just try to, if we look at some of it right now and say, okay, we have $1.4 million this year, okay? If we look at $400,000 of demo on the Dover campus, I know we said 300,000, but I think that is going to be a little higher than that. And I think there could be some other things that if we're just doing demo that we'd have to take care of, that would be a little more
Number one more time.
long-term. So if I use a number of $400,000 for the demo of the Dover
Yep.
Elementary School, okay? And then I look at $300,000 to invest into Hilliard to move our administrative offices to.
Yep.
And then we look at roughly $50,000 in the tennis court, and we look at roughly $30,000 for the intercom system, okay? We're somewhere in the range of $780,000, $800,000,
Right.
okay? So that leaves about $600,000 in the account, in our PI fund. Now, I really would ask the board not to, put us down to the penny, okay? Because things come up, okay? An example would be, as we talked in our finance committee, we need to buy a new plow truck. One of our pickup trucks, the frame is rusted through, it's beyond repair. We need a plow truck for the winter to replace one of the ones that is no longer functioning. That's a $35,000 purchase. I don't want to take it down to zero, so I'd like to have some money in there. If we're going to use some of the PI for technology, we want to leave some money in there as well. So, right now, if we look at that, say roughly $800,000, we have a maximum of $600,000 left that we're looking to allocate right now, assuming we don't take additional debt in any way. So you have a maximum of $600,000. Again, I would say that I would ask that we probably only look at, leaving $200,000 or $300,000 so we can look at some tech purchases, we can look at some emergency things that may come up within repairs and stuff. So right now we have about $300,000, maybe $400,000 left that we can, we can discuss all night long if you'd like. But in reality, that's all that we have left in the pot, assuming we don't take debt. So, when we look at it, if the ball field's coming in at true $800,000, it's not something we could put in to this year's if we're set on those other numbers. If you'd like to make changes to that, that's your prerogative.
And assuming we don't take on any debt.
And assuming we don't take on additional debt.
So
If you'd like me to take on debt, I can invest that. I can look into that.
Yeah, going back to what I said earlier about with the capability of getting sponsorship dollars down the road, I don't know when, but I think if a concerted effort is put out there with the boosters spearheading it, because they don't really have any big project right now for them to spearhead. This would give them an opportunity to rally around something to help drum up some money. So what I would suggest is we could take $400,000 of the dollars that Mr. Hopkins was just discussing, making sure we have reserve funds in there for computers and the whatnots that happen in a given year. I agree 100% with Dr. Goggin and Mr. Hopkins. We do not want to get into a habit of going to general funds for capital improvement items. We just don't. We did it before, and when we did it before, we just didn't do it because we always put it towards safety and education, and hence, our facilities over the last 20 years, we've rebuilt them all. So the permanent improvement was a key thing for us to get. for now and into the future. We know it. The softball, baseball fields, these are a perfect example of utilization of money for a purpose like this. I would have no problem sitting with any resident in the city saying, we made a decision that it makes sense to do this for the students, the softball, the baseballs, and the future students to be able to use those fields. There hasn't been any improvements to the fields in well over 10 years. It's the only sport that has not had an improved or a brand new facility to work with. You got new wrestling room, you got a new gym for basketball, you got for volleyball. You have a new turf field for football, and lacrosse can play there where they can go on the grass. Soccer can play there or play on the grass. Tennis is getting a second shot of fixing theirs. There's a new track. I can't think of anything or any other varsity sport that has not been improved, their facilities, in the last 10 years. Every single thing has been done. So permanent improvement, that's why we passed it. It's exactly why we passed it, to do things like this. And again, the life expectancy for these projects will be 10 plus years. And even at the point where you would say replace the infield turf for either softball or baseball fields, you're looking at a much smaller percentage. Yeah. Dave can correct me, but if you had to replace the baseball turf, which would be a little bit more than the softball, it would probably be $200,000.
Yeah, I believe that's close.
So again, you start to do some fundraising, you can start putting away a little bit of that money every single year for that down into the future. Or if we do go ahead and ask Mr. Hopkins to borrow the $400,000, as we start to get some sponsorships in, maybe we can pay that down and pay that off sooner than whatever term period that Mr. Hopkins is going to want to work with. And again, if you took $400,000 and you took it out, say 10 years, now you're only looking at $40,000 a year that is spoken for, which is the smallest piece of all the other items. And I don't know when the bus lease comes off.
Well, but I think with the bus lease, even if when it comes off in I think 3 more years, the issue that you're going to have is we're going to need to make, originally when we had looked at the PI fund, we were doing set-asides. We were saying we were going to buy 3 buses a year. We were going to set aside X number of dollars for new windows or roof replacements, things like that. As things have come up, and part of it is because we didn't make investments, the district did not make investments beforehand without the PI fund. We've been rushing to use the PI fund, and we haven't started our program of, we haven't started the program of putting these set aside so that we can fund them in the future. And so, I do have hesitation on taking on debt, within there because it does, I use the example of it mortgages your future away because as you have things coming up, you have tied up money, in the long term. So that's my feeling on it. It's just my approach that I take with it. But, we want to be cognizant because as we look through these things, we have a number of things that we're kicking off into the following fiscal year or the year after. And even if we look at this and say, okay, without Parkside, you're somewhere in the nature of, 3.9 million, call it, okay? 3.8 million, 3.9 million. Plus we've got these other things that are coming up, plus we've got technology, okay? 3.9 million is nearly 4 years worth of collections, okay? So you already have 4 years planned out on one sheet, okay? And that doesn't address your technology, that doesn't address your other issues that may come up. So I do have an extreme amount of caution because I want to make sure that we're prepared for, because, I hope to see myself here in many, many years. And I don't want somebody coming back and saying, oh, well, you didn't plan for a roof replacement? Well, we did, but, we had these other projects come up. So, it is a challenge for us because Pete was part of the process, or Dr. Zagray was part of the process for planning. Mr. Kosovar was part of the process of planning how we were structuring that out. So that's where I am cautious, and I just want to share my caution with the board.
Mr. Fanouken, you have done a tremendous job. You have moved faster than I thought you would move. Your passion is evident, and it's to be applauded, and we appreciate that. We're hearing this plan really for the first time. Sounds like there are some variations of it. It's a new business item that we can continue to put on the agenda, and we can continue to talk about it. And we should. Everything that you said regarding all of the other sports and all the other activities, baseball and softball seem to be left out, and I think we need to address it. At this time, are you comfortable if we move on? We're going to continue to talk about it, and
Well, I question the board as
Yeah.
relates to timetable. We have a timetable with spring sports, and unlike the question of fall sports, I think spring sports will be played, especially baseball. They played all summer long in tournaments all over Ohio, actually all over the country, and there was not major outbreaks at all. And then maybe it's because, they were kids. And these kids were all in the dugouts, no masks, no nothing, all summer long, playing baseball. And there was, just even on the team we had 15 kids, there was not one incident. Or we never heard of any incidents either with teams we played because then they would have told us to quarantine. So I guess what I'm saying is we're going to play in the spring. I'm pretty confident we're going to play in the spring, no matter if we're purple or not. I'm pretty confident we're going to play spring.
and we can play on the current fields, right?
You could play. The girls softball could play, but you're going to need to make some significant improvements to the boys baseball field.
How much would those cost?
Dave,
If we just need to get into playable,
Yeah, so to get the baseball into more playable, we would need to laser level the infield again. We would need to get a contractor out there, grade it back out, probably redevelop again the batter's box, pitcher's mound, recut the turf and the edges around infield, and the knee wall, fencing, things like that. I'm guessing we probably would not do just to get a field in playing condition. We
Right.
want to make it safe for the kids on the
Right.
field.
Right.
I honestly do not have an estimate to give you on that. I do know it would be a lot less than obviously any of the first phase that we're talking about for this project.
Can we find out the cost on that and if there's any additional machines or whatever equipment that needs to be purchased or?
Yes, we can do that. I do know whatever we do on that infield for either baseball or softball, whatever work we do to develop it just for natural turf play will be destroyed again once we go back over it. So whatever money we put into it, it's going to go away because we'll have to touch it again.
Mr. Kosar, would you fathom the guess it's going to be anywhere from 50 to 100,000?
I was thinking in the 50,000 range, or potentially maybe a little bit lower, John, but I'd have to check.
And it's not going to address the drainage issue that we have.
It will not address the
So
drainage
you
issue.
can fix the field as well as you want it, and the first big rain we have, there goes home plate, and it's wiped out. Or if it's not wiped out, there's not proper drainage there, it will not be playable. The unfortunate thing, with Cleveland is it's a shitty ass climate, which is why you have turf in lots of baseball, football places, so that it can be utilized. I know I said shitty. So.
if I may propose to you, Mr.
They're going to
President,
bleep you out.
at this point, I think regardless of decisions that we make with baseball or
Right.
Dover, okay, I need to bring it back for board approval.
Right.
Okay, so, nothing's going to happen between now and our next board meeting, which is currently scheduled for November 9th. Monday, the November 9th, if I'm reading the calendar correctly.
Right?
So what I would propose is that we continue this conversation on the 9th, because again, if we're going to bring something for baseball, it has to come before the board. All the numbers that we're talking about is over the $50,000 mark.
Right,
I've got to bring it
right.
back to the board. If we're, no matter what we do with Dover campus, I have to bring it to the board. So I would say that we can continue this when we have more information and we can work through some of these, get specific answers, and have hopefully administratively some recommendations to the board for that November 9th meeting.
Do you have the answers that you wanted this evening?
This absolutely gives us good guidance on how to move forward, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
On to the treasurer's recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a few of them in front of you tonight, just three of them. The first one, the 5-year forecast, I think we've gone over that already, so I'll skip that. We do have 5B, then and now certificates. You'll see a handful of then and nows. I will just point out, because I know we see many of them over and over again. A great example of this is looking at the bottom one, Tyler Technologies. They do our routing program for the buses. We're October 26th. The service begins November 1st, okay? And this technically is a then and now because they put an invoice date of like September 1st, okay? I mean, it's just sometimes we get into these weird things.
Traversa?
What's that? Yeah.
Okay.
So we get into these weird things where, again, this isn't, in most businesses, this is not an invoice
Yeah.
after the fact of services. But because the invoice date is before our PO, it is a then and now. And then the last one, 5C, is a purpose statement for the work-study lab at the high school. So if it so pleases the board, I would ask that we do 5A separately. I like to do the 5-year forecast separately, and then combine B and C.
Is there a motion to approve treasurer's recommendation 5A, the resolution to approve the 5-year forecast?
So move.
Second?
Discussion? Roll call.
Blazinski,
Yes.
Here not,
Yes?
Fanouken,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's recommendations 5B and C?
So moved?
Second?
Discussion? Roll call.
Here not,
Yes?
Fanouken,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Blazinski,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We'll move on to Dr. Goggin and the superintendent's recommendations.
Thank you. I'd like to start off with resolution accepting gifts and donations. Charles and Michelle Castillo donated 18 cloth-based masks to the Transportation Department in the Westlake City Schools. I'd like to thank them for that.
You bet.
We have Resolution 6B that is approving employment of the following classified members. Letter C is a recall to a position at Dover Intermediate and Lee Burnison. Letter D is approving some classified substitutes. Letter E are some teachers who agreed to be home instructors. Letter F is approving licensed screening staff, a couple speech pathologists to do screenings for us. Resolution number G, or letter G, is to approve a supplemental contract for Mrs. Patriarch for the orchestra pit for the 2020 spring play, which was last year. And then the last one is a resolution to approve a pupil transportation contract. If it so pleases the board, 6A on its own to recognize those folks for their generous donation, and 6B through 6H could be bundled together.
Will do. Is there a motion to approve superintendent's recommendation 6A?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? I'll say thank you to our donors. Thank you for all that you do for our community, for making the contribution to the district. Further discussion? Roll call?
I apologize. I have Ms. Lazinski as second. Did Dr. Stoll motion? Thank you. All right, Stoll,
Yes.
Lazinski,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Here not.
Yes?
Motion carries.
Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation 6B through 6H?
So moved?
Second?
Discussion? Roll call?
Fanouken,
Yes.
Here not,
Yes?
Kraft,
Yes.
Lizinski,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
At this time, we have board comments. Is there a board member that would like to add to the meeting tonight?
Just had one quick question. If you look at the meeting schedule, the only meeting scheduled in November, according to the website, is the 23rd. Are we adding one for the 9th?
You know, that's a great point. In November, we only had one because we were supposed to be at Capitol Conference. So that's where we would have the second one in there, typically down at Capitol Conference. So, yeah, I mean, we can certainly talk about adding one for the 9th. I know I threw that out there. I assumed being the second Monday of the month. Is everyone available to do that?
Yes, I'd like to
Sure.
do that.
Yes.
All right, we'll shoot for the 9th.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Other comments?
Currently, I've got the OSBA delegate meeting Thursday night for voting on all the
The
new
26th?
resolutions. What?
Is it the 26th or?
No, as the delegate for the OSBA.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm the only one who has to go to that one. They had the pre-delegate meeting last week, so it was so much fun. And really, my one comment I do want to make, because my email's been blowing up with a number of emails coming in from parents. Please remember, again, this is potentially, fingers crossed, we don't actually have this happen, the first time that a county in Ohio is going to hit purple on Thursday. And remember, this is all new territory for everyone. And so, as Dr. Goggin presented earlier, we're still working through everything. So patience is key.
I know I've mentioned this board in the past, and I'll mention it again, that as those emails come into the entire board, I do respond to each and every one of those emails. Many times there are phone numbers attached to that, and I have had fantastic conversations and interactions with many families that have sent emails to us. And I enjoy those conversations via phone most. They tend to be very, very productive and supportive. As I spend time with our superintendent and our treasurer, I have the opportunity to wander through this particular building and spend some good amount of time with many others, including Dr. Zagray, and spending some time in the technology office. I'm just reminded of the tremendous amount of work Dr. Zagray and his staff do for the entire district. It's greatly appreciated. From making certain that our community and school network is set for the current environment, to working with individuals and families and students at home, and that Dr. Zagray has done a number of times. So I just want to say thank you for all that you do and your staff. And to our nurses, Mrs. Byers, Mrs. Kaiser, and Mrs. Detweiler, as they really do quite a bit for our district, for our schools. I want to say a special thank you to them also. Any other comments from the board?
Yes, we'd like to wish you a happy birthday.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thank you. All right. Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So move?
Discussion? Second?
Second?
Who's the motion? Thank you.
Discussion? Roll
Let's
call?
do it.
To adjourn at 8:38 PM. Here not,
Yes?
Fanouken,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Lizinski,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We're adjourned. Thank you.